Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Powering Thoughts podcast. So in this episode I'm going to be going over sort of 2022 year in review alongside my perception of how luck is something in which we cause to happen, and that can only come about through a few principles people will be familiar with, but it's going to be based off of a few things that I've learnt this year alongside a couple of the books I've been reading recently. So if you've read the books such as a Man Thinketh or Unscripted, then you'll kind of know where I'm going with this. But yeah, it's going to be quite an interesting one. Obviously a lot's happened this year and I've thought of this would be the perfect opportunity to discuss that. So thank you for tuning in and let's get into it. Okay, so this year started off where I'd been in a job for about 3 years. It was as the sales and marketing manager for a couple of gyms. In this role, I actually had quite a lot of responsibility. It built up over a long period of time. And towards the end, I actually came up with an idea in around 2019 and finally sort of been able to test it. And I sort of saw the potential for what this thing can do. So I personally took this towards the directors in which I worked for, and we sort of understood the magnitude of the effect that this thing could have, and it was unbelievable, really. And unfortunately, we didn't see eye to eye in how we would take it forward and how we would progress. And so from my point of view, if that wasn't able to go any further, then my time within that business had come to an end, because that had been everything I'd worked for 2-3 years to try and build up and allow to happen. So if it wasn't being done in the way in which was beneficial for the two of us, then I thought, you know what, I think this is the best time for me to leave. So what's crazy about sort of events like this is you've kind of based your whole sense of self-identity around an idea and a job. And the way that I'm obviously very obsessive about things. So I was given a goal probably within my first year that I was there to say, this is the goal for the two gyms, this is what we want to achieve. So that day I went home, wrote on a whiteboard in my bedroom saying, this is what I've got to achieve, and I used the whiteboard as something that I could use to brainstorm all these different ideas. So as the years developed and we tested things, I would cross things out, try things, and sort of build it up over a period of time until I sort of narrowed it down into exactly what worked, what assisted, and how it helped get these businesses to what they wanted to achieve. So when I decided that it was time for me to go, it was quite crazy because a lot of my own personal time was consumed in trying to do everything I could to cause this vision or this goal to be achieved or obtained. So once I left, I went through that thing that I believe everyone sort of goes through when you go through a major life change, whether it's a job, a breakup, leaving an institution you've been a part of, like an educational one like university. And again, like it's like the same sort of one I had when I left basketball. It's like, well, what do I do? What do I do now? What am I interested in? Where am I going to go? So yeah, I was kind of in a state where I was trying to work that out, and I went and worked as a barman at this restaurant on the beach, and it was really nice because I was just saying I need a sense of I need to breathe, I need to relax. I've been so intense for 3 years working on this thing and I'm not ready to just jump into something else. So I had interviews for some decent marketing jobs at some businesses, and I was like going through all the interview process, and I actually pulled out at the final stages of multiple interviews because I was like, I've just come out of something quite intense that took a lot of me and I'm not ready to just jump straight back into something else. So I went and got a job working as a barman on the beach. So I was like, I just need some time to breathe. And I think it being the summer, this would be the perfect place to be, just to relax for a while. And doing so, what was quite crazy is I found out from all the things that I learned in the gym in that period of time, sort of the importance of staying true to your values and to who you are as a person. And often when money comes into things, people do change and the real sides of them do become uncovered, and sometimes that can actually completely change the relationship that you previously had with someone, and that can actually cause quite disturbance two ways in a sense. So for me, it was, even though I'd left the gym, how it unfolded and how it finished, it left me thinking, wow, was I the problem? What did I cause? And then you look inwardly thinking, wow, this has actually fundamentally changed me because of these relationships I had for so long, with how they've drastically changed over these just quite simple things. It made me go, wow, I really need to think and reflect. But what I found from that is that, and what I pat myself on the back for now is that I'm really proud that I stuck to what my values were, who I was, and what I believed in. And so when I started working at the beach, again, I had some amazing people that I was working with, but then politics started getting involved, and I was like, that I just wanted a job part-time on a beach where I could just relax and breathe for a bit while I'd work out what I want to do next. And seeing all these politics, I was like, I don't need to be a part of this. It doesn't benefit me in any way, and all it's going to do is just drop ink into the water, which is your mental health and your state of mind. And so I decided to hand in my notice again with no actual pure idea of where I was going, what I was going into, but with belief in myself that I know I'm skilled in what I do and what I offer and the value that I bring, and an opportunity will come if I put myself up against a wall and force myself to find one. And funnily enough, after I handed in my notice, a couple of days later, one of my closest friends messaged me, who lives in Australia, and we hadn't spoken properly for about a year. So he and his wife are two amazing people, and during the lockdowns we were having sort of a weekly call where we would set tasks for ourselves that we would hold each other accountable to, and each week we would check in on a Saturday and be like, have you achieved them? Why haven't you? Let's adjust your goals to try and make them more achievable, and so you'd actually be able to do it. And we hadn't talked for obviously the previous year coming out of lockdown, because he'd gotten very busy with the business he was running and I'd gotten very busy with what I was doing at work. So him messaging at me at this point of time was quite crazy. It was almost, it couldn't have come at any more of a perfect point. And well, I ended up calling and having a discussion, and it turned out that he asked me what I was doing at the moment. I said, I'm kind of in a state of purgatory, I guess, where I've got a couple of months until I'm supposed to start a master's in clinical psychology. So at the moment I'm just doing whatever to pass the time. I've just handed my notice at this place, and I'm expecting that I'm going to find something in the meantime. I said that I'm looking maybe at just going to Barcelona for a week, because it's somewhere that I've always wanted to go, and why not just book a ticket and just do it? And so he said to me, oh, you should come to Australia. And I went, is that actually an option? Because if that is, I will buy a ticket tomorrow and I will get on a plane and I'll come see you. So he asked his wife, and she said yeah, which was insane. So on a Sunday, it was just an idea. Following Wednesday, I'd booked a ticket for 2 weeks' time to go spend a month with them in Australia, and which is absolutely unbelievable and insane. And coming out of what was quite a negative, toxic experience at the gym that I'd been working in and where I'd left, being around some really good people in a completely new environment was absolutely eye-opening. Like, I'd always been I would always say a pessimistic realist or something, where I would always say the reasons why things wouldn't happen and why you'd have to obviously do X amount more to give a higher chance of something happening. And on the other end of the spectrum is my friends, and they were very much along the lines of, look, you just do things, and when whatever comes from it, you sort it out then. Stop trying to it's like paralysis by analysis, where you try and think of all the outcomes of something's going to happen, so it stops you from doing anything. And they were like to me, just do the first step, take the next step, take the next step. When a problem comes up, you fix it then. Otherwise, what you're going to be doing is these little jobs and these little things that don't actually matter, and you're actually just wasting time in a different form of procrastination. Although we all know it, the way in which I saw them doing it, in the fact that they had so much belief in what they were doing and what they were trying to create, that they were making it happen simply by just doing it and figuring it out as they go. And I've always been one of those people that has to know everything before they start, and then obviously that pushes its things happening off for quite a long time. So seeing them acting in that way and just doing, and how much more optimistic they were and how much that actually benefited their lives, I was like, well, this is something I really need to adapt and really need to take on. And so being around different people with different perspectives is completely eye-opening. It completely shone a new light into the environment in which I'd been in, because it felt a lot more oppressive and a lot more toxic, because I'm now around people who are extremely positive and they believe things can happen and they're going to make it happen. And they do that just by simply doing it. And if something doesn't work, you don't do it, you do something else. And I was like, this is amazing. So I returned back to England, And I was very close to actually moving back out there, just because being around them to me was something that I can't understate the value of how positive it was to be around them. And I wanted to continue it. And I thought, I'm coming back to the UK, I'm going back to a place in which I don't associate very many positive things with. I was struggling to find positives in which is a reason to stay when put on a list side by side of the positive and negatives of moving to Australia. So what I started to do, I started to try and build the Powering Thoughts thing and offering a social media services to people. Again, I started having that thing where I was doing sales calls, I was contacting certain people, but what was quite funny was my background was in social media marketing for fitness, and the results in which I produced were very significant, but due to the relationship I had when leaving, that actually now impacts the relationships I'm trying to have with new people, almost putting a blockage in front of me before I'd even started. So I was trying to contact people and it was not going ahead because of the relationship I'd had with people in the past. And so I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm trying to do positive things and move forward, but it's becoming very, very difficult. So what I actually did is I applied for several jobs. I decided coming back that obviously I was supposed to go do clinical psychology at university, and I went to the university just for a meeting I was supposed to have, and it just didn't feel right. It just didn't feel right. There were so many things that just didn't click. There was like, I feel like if I do this, I am forcing myself to do it, so I'm doing something. But doing this for a year, it's not going to get me any further to what I think it is that I want to be and what I want to do. So I decided to defer the year and apply for several jobs in which I thought might give me a bit of an indication in working out whether it is the marketing side of things that I enjoy, or if it's the psychology side that I want to do, or if it's more of the thing of the Powering Thoughts side of stuff. So I had a few different routes and I was trying to work out what exactly it was. So in my head it was, do I move to Australia and start my own business? Do I like my own creative marketing agency where I can do social media and digital marketing for different businesses and run it for myself, being around people which have started their own business and they were capable of doing it, so there was a lot I could learn from them and the people in which they're associated with? Or it was, do I do a master's in clinical psychology and go towards getting a PhD and becoming a clinical psychologist? Or it was, do I get a job in an agency and see if I actually really do enjoy marketing? And if I did, then what can I learn from that would actually allow me to do it myself? So it takes a lot of risk to go to Australia to start something that I don't actually fully know if I enjoy. And so I concluded that if I actually go get a job in an agency, I can understand how it is run, if I enjoy it, and if that is something that I would want to pursue for myself or within a company. And so that's what I decided to do. I actually applied for a lot of jobs, got several interviews, and I ended up decided going to a digital marketing agency, and it has been brilliant so far. Like, I'm in an environment where I'm around some very, very skilled people who are absolutely brilliant in what they do. They are specialists in the things that they do, and learning from them and being around them in just a matter of a couple of months, I've learned so much more than I previously had no idea that I didn't know. So that's been quite revolutionary. And so I would say from these different things, these are probably the three biggest events that I went through this year, which was leaving a job in which I'd been so focused on and it'd become a big part of who I was for 3 years, going away to sort of process leaving that and where do I go next. The next thing was obviously going to Australia and being around, not only being in a different country, but being around people with a completely different outlook on life was absolutely amazing. And then the next thing was actually returning home and actually going into a completely different industry and learning from the people that are around me there. And those three things have taught me so much. And so there's been a couple of books that I've been reading recently, which I really think sort of describe things that I've gone through. And I would say one of the biggest things that I've learned is that there's no such thing as luck, like at all. Like luck, whatever results you get are a product of your thoughts and the actions in which you take. So your circumstances that you are in are completely a product of the thoughts in which you have. So there are some circumstances that you can't control. However, the thoughts in which that you allow to get deep rooted enough within you are the things that actually also cause your circumstances. So for instance, a perfect way of explaining it is if you have good thoughts and you do good deeds, it's impossible to get a bad result. So if you had bad thoughts and then you committed bad deeds, you're going to get bad results. So if you end up finding that you're in a place that you don't enjoy or you don't like, the reason you are there is because of the actions in which you have taken, or the actions in which you haven't taken, and the thoughts in which you've had. So I listened to something recently by Carl Jung, and it was very eye-opening for me. And it sort of talks about that we're afraid to become the person that we could become. Like, we all talk about what it would take and who we want to be. We have these dreams and ideals, but sometimes we realize that we're not getting any closer to it. And upon reflection, there's this idea and a concept that I found really, really fascinating. And it's the idea that what we do is we see ourselves as having endless potential. Like, we could become anything. Like, we know that if we were to focus on one thing, that we could achieve it. But however, if we were to do that, we're afraid that it puts us on the point of measurement against others, and it gives us a possibility of failure. So if we don't do that, then we still have the possibility of being everything and being the best. But as soon as we start running the race, we start to comprehend that we might lose it. So for instance, the way in which you can picture it using that race analogy is that 100-meter event and you're a participant in it. You look at that race and go, if I run this race, I could win it. There's every possibility that I could win it. However, when you actually take the actions to line up in the race, you see that you are racing others. And when that race actually commences, you see that others beat you, and then you understand that maybe you weren't as fast or as good as you think you are, and it's going to take a hell of a lot more work to get better than the person who beat you. And so because of that, we try to repress the actions in which we take. More so fond of the belief that we could be anything, and that's a lot more comforting than the actual doing, because that requires a lot of those deaths and rebirths where you have to actually get a true objective understanding of where you currently are at on, say, like a ladder of progression and what you could possibly become. And then you actually, from doing that, learn that there's a lot more that you could be, and that's going to require a lot more than what you are currently doing. So for me, we all want to be pure potential. Like, we love the idea that anything's possible and we could be anything, and that's why we put off so much time and procrastinate so much, because we're actually scared of the act of actually doing and actually becoming that thing that we could become. And as well as that, we're afraid that if we choose that one thing and we work that hard towards it, then what if it ends up being the thing that we never wanted to do anyway? It's never as rewarding as we actually thought it would be. So there's a lot of goes into this, and the way I like to put it is that extraordinary results only come from extraordinary effort, and there literally is no shortcuts in life. Like, we all want to have the silver bullet where it's, how can I be earning this much in a month? How can I do this? And we just think it's very easy to do, and we want it to be easy, because to actually put the work in is a lot more difficult. And we also fill up our lives with this noise that we want to feel that we're actually making progress towards these goals, but what we're actually doing is minimal in terms of what causes it. So if you're familiar with the compound effect, you know that very small, consistent actions over a long period of time produces disproportionate results. So the way I like to put this in, from what I've been reading recently, is that there is a difference between micro events and macro events. So a micro event, several of micro events over a period of time causes a macro event. But what we try to do is do one or two macro events and realize that, it's not actually producing the results that we want. So for instance, if you want to build a business, you have to have a business plan. You've got to work daily. You've got to do sales calls. You've got to all those tiny little things daily over a period of years for it to actually produce the results that you want. Yet what people do and what they favor doing is, I'm going to do these macro events, which makes me feel like I'm making progress, but I'm not actually doing the necessary work which causes the results in which I desire. So this is sort of an unconscious process that we all kind of do in our lives, but it's something that we definitely need to work on. So for instance, what we'll do as a macro event is we'll sort out business cards, or we'll email Bill Gates on his advice. We'll do these big events that actually aren't the necessary things to causing the results to happen. So it's actually through doing the 100 emails, 100 sales calls to actually get your first client. That is the necessary work, the micro events of the daily routine that causes the results to actually happen. So there is no silver bullet to getting what you want. You actually have to turn up daily, choose a goal in which that you want, and you have to turn up daily doing those micro events every single day to cause the results in which that you desire. So there's this analogy that I read that I thought was absolutely phenomenal in how it described this. So it's called like the Gumball principle. It's in the book called Unscripted, and as soon as I read it, I absolutely loved it. It's the idea that life is like a gumball machine. So you know those ones with like the glass, it encases a load of gumballs, you put a coin in, you turn it, and a gumball comes out. And the way in which he describes it is there's ones of several colours. So there's white ones, there's orange ones, there's red ones, and there's gold ones. Now, in terms of the numbers of each, there is a different amount. So 80% of them are white ones, 10% are orange ones, and 7% are red ones, and 3% are gold ones. But the point is that the white ones are just events and sort of outcomes that happen that don't really have any massive impact on how it changes your life, but having several of them together cause the other ones to come out. So for instance, an orange one will come out and it'll have something written on the back of it as a hint towards the actions in which you need to take to continue moving forwards again. Red ones are the bad sort of events that happen in your life, so becoming bankrupt, a car crash, or something life-changing that is negative that obviously isn't beneficial, not what you desired. And a gold one is one of those breakthrough things. It's one of the best events that could possibly happen. So for instance, it could be a promotion, it could be winning the lottery, it could be the results of starting your own business. And so the way in which he described it in the book is perfect, as he goes that to actually get those gold gumballs to come out, we have to keep turning up and putting the coin in and twisting it and letting the other ones come out. So we have to have like 20 of these white gumballs before we ever even get close to getting a gold one. But what a lot of us want to believe, that keep dreaming and we keep hoping that we'll end up getting one of these gold gumballs in life. But the actual reality is that every single day you've got to turn up, you've got to be pushing yourself, you've got to be progressing, you've got to have a routine where you're actually doing the necessary work towards causing the things that you want to happen. The whole point is that if you knew that you'd had to play the game, there were no shortcuts, and if you were to go up to the machine 10 times and you would be like to get a gold one, then in life you'd be more willing to actually do that. But we actually try to look at it in the sense where it's not that simple, but really it is. So sometimes we're going to have to go up to the machine 30 times, we'll get 30 white ones out, then we'll get 3 of these orange ones which didn't really do anything, but they sort of hinted to us and where we're supposed to go next and what we're supposed to do. And then we'll get a red one, and that sometimes will make us go, there's no point because this was so disastrous that it's made me not want to continue. But then if we continue going again, we might get another 30 white ones. But then one more time, we put in that coin and we turn it and a gold one comes out, and we go, well, it's worth it. All of that work that I put in, all the things that I sacrificed to cause that to happen, that caused this, and that made the whole journey worth it. So the best ways in which to cause that to happen, I believe, from the things I learned this year, is you have to have a routine. You have to be able to know that you have to have some desire that you actually want, and you've got to know what you've got to do each day to cause that to happen. And I don't mean those macro events that aren't actually causing the results. I mean those micro events that you have to do daily in order to cause those white gumballs to come out to eventually cause the gold one. Also as well, I'd say positivity and optimism. I can't even begin to explain how important and how valuable they are. Until I'd been around people that were on that side of the spectrum compared to where I was, I didn't realise how negative the environment in which I was in was. And to be around better people or to be in better environments, it seriously opens your eyes to what it takes to actually, it makes you feel life's a lot more favourable to you and there's a lot more reason to turn up and keep putting the coins into that gumball machine. So you seriously need a positive outlook. And if you don't currently have one, then what you're finding is those thoughts are causing negativity, which is causing the negative circumstances of your life. So sometimes it is seriously that you need to completely change where you're at, where you're currently based, or who you're currently spending your time with, so that you can have these positive things to happen. And a big part of that is who you're associated with. So there's that saying that you are an amalgamation of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And if you are not happy with your circumstances, then the primary reason is yourself, and second thing is the external things that are around you, and you have control over changing that. And in changing it, what you'll find, or through actively making the changes to actually change the circumstances you're in and the ways in which you're thinking, if you go somewhere else or do something else, or you make some changes to the life in which you're currently living, the ways that you're thinking, in a period of about 3 months, you actually look back and realize you're in a completely different place to where you were. And that obviously only happens through continually turning up each day and putting the work in. Going home and sort of laying on the bed and monging out and watching a rerun of Friends or The Office isn't actually going to get you to where you want to be. It's the coming home and putting the extra work in. Like, if you want a new job, it's expanding, doing some online courses, or going around people who have a job that you want and asking them what they did. Those are the actions that actually cause you to get where you want to be. If you want to start a business, it's not making the business cards that is actually going to get you to where you want to be. It's actually calling the businesses and actually trying to get your first sale. It's all those micro events. So from this podcast, what I'm basically hinting at or trying to conclude is that you're going to go through a lot. And so for me, at the place in which I was at when I left, it was kind of a red gumball. When I was working at the beach, it was several white ones and then a couple of orange ones, saying that I don't really want to do this. I'm not really enjoying it. It's not an environment I want to be in. And then having done those previous things of being in the position in which I was in, when my friend contacted me, it was a gold one. Being out in Australia with them, I realised this is the environment, this is something that I want to replicate in my own life, and I need to do the work in which is necessary to cause this to happen. So then when I returned home, obviously now it's another white one, it's another white one, applying for another job, it's another white one, it's another white one. And then when I got the interviews and I went to the job in which I'm at now, it's a gold one that came through. And now each day working there, it's obviously a continual white one and another white one, but it's unlocking the potentiality for what happens next. So obviously I've got a vision in mind of where I want to go and what I want to be. So where I'm at is necessary to cause that to happen, but I've also got to turn up each day and do the work outside of my working hours to cause this to grow and stuff like that. So everything, there are no shortcuts. You have to turn up every day and put the work in, and that's what causes these gold gumballs to happen. If you just obviously turn up to work each day and complain and you just say, oh, it's everyone else's fault I'm at where I'm at, or I can't stand it here, or this kind of thing, you're not even walking up to the machine and putting a coin in. You're not even giving yourself a chance of a gold gumball. So this year, it's so important to set yourself some serious goals, that who you want to be, what you want to do, and then working out how to actually make that happen. So, okay, these are the changes I'll have to make. These are the thoughts that would actually become more indicative of doing that, and actually then turning up and putting that coin in, that causing those white gumballs to come out so those gold ones would happen. So yeah, that's what I've kind of learned specifically over this year, that luck doesn't really exist. There are no shortcuts in life, and it's about having a positive mindset, the positive thoughts, and putting yourself in environments and turning up each day that cause the things that you want to happen. So yeah, that's my year in review. Thank you for tuning in, and see you in the next one. Bye.